So just a real quick word about who we are, the National Cybersecurity Alliance. So we're a nonprofit. We are co-founders along with DHS of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. That's probably what we're most known for every October. We're also champions of Data Privacy Week in January every year. And we have on staysafeonline.org hundreds of articles and free resources to help you and your family and your business stay safe online. So that's the end of my public service announcement for the National Cybersecurity Alliance. Thanks for bearing with me. So what is it that we're protecting? You can see some of the stats that I gathered on this slide, right? 1.5 million jobs created every year, $413.3 billion in exports. You represent 44% of our GDP. You have a significant spend on technology, $370 billion. 99.9% of all US businesses are considered small businesses. So a threat to you is really a threat to our whole economy. If you get a cold, the country is going to get the flu, as they say. When I look at things like those 1.5 million jobs created every year, and the 50% of you that probably started your business at home, out of your garage, as they say, isn't that critical to what America is all about? That's the American dream. Go out on your own, take risks. If you're successful, you reap the rewards, move on up in life. So this is really fundamental to capitalism and to democracy and to our way of life, just how important small businesses are overall in our economy. But you might think, I don't have anything of value. I don't have deep pockets. I'm too small to be a target. How would the cyber criminals even know that I exist? But honestly, this is really what you're up against. 65% of all cyber attacks are aimed at the United States. And then 61% of small businesses are actually targeted by attackers. They do know who you are. Your employees have to defend 350% more social engineering attacks, so people attempting to trick them, than larger companies, than employees of larger companies. And I'll let you read some of these other data points. 51% of SMBs have no cybersecurity measures in place at all. 1 of every 323 emails your businesses receive are malicious. I think the way the bad guys are looking at this, you're considered a little bit easier to hack because you don't have the defenses of a large blue chip company. Those flags in the middle are there for a reason. China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran present the biggest cyber threats to our country and our citizens and all of our businesses, large and small. So one footnote before I go on with the rest of my presentation, one little footnote specifically on China. If you do business with China, in China, have suppliers in China, have any relationship with China, I invite you to listen to this or read. It's audio and an article on the NPR website, to look at this article at your leisure and just educate yourself on the risks there. The short-term gain might not be worth some long-term pain. So just a side note, read that article if you have time, if you're involved with doing business with China in any way. So back to security and small businesses. You don't have to look very far. This is in the headlines way too often, almost daily. Just some examples here from the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, the BBC News, and there's plenty more. But I think the fact that you're here today tells me that you understand this is a threat to your livelihood. So I credit you first and foremost just for being here, and I thank you for your attendance today. So what is it that they want? They want money and things they can turn into money, which in most cases is data. Personally identifying data of you and your employees, your customers, your intellectual property. You're all sitting on data that's valuable. And so how do they turn that into money? They sell it. It's a lot easier to sell stolen data on the dark web than it is to go rob a bank in person. Think of the risk to the criminal, right? I don't have to worry that a security guard is gonna shoot me, or the police are gonna arrest me in person without needing to do a lot of investigating and track me down. I can do this from the comfort of my home. These are some of the going prices on the dark web right now, the marketplace for stolen data. So remember, they want money and things they can turn into money. So this is what the money piece looks like. This is currently a $1.5 billion market. The size of the market has actually dropped a little bit in the past year or two for two reasons. A few of the big folks on the dark web, the big markets, have actually been taken down. And then there's more data for sale. So it's supply and demand. But we're still looking at approximately a $6 trillion tax, if you will, on the global economy. Like that's the amount of annual damages that are done globally. So do a little math. You know, how many consumer records do you have in your business? What's that worth? When I was at CDK and at Ford Motor Company, I worked with car dealers and small suppliers, technology providers in the automotive sector. And the average dealer has 50,000 consumer records in their database, including social security numbers and driver's license numbers. So if you do the math, you're clearly worth something to a hacker. So the cybercrime market is also a very efficient market. There's no regulation, there's no unions, there's no OSHA, there's no compliance. They don't have to deal with a lot of things that we deal with in our businesses. So they're highly competitive, they're very efficient, and it's gotten really cheap to actually hire them. And they have specialties, and they will hire each other for their specialties. So if, for example, you need outbound phone calls as part of your scam, that's one of the services you need, and you don't have enough people to do those outbound phone calls to say that you're the IRS or whatever your scam is, then they can hire a call center to do that portion for them. Seeing that you can take down somebody's website, a distributed denial of service attack on a website, for as little as $5 an hour isn't enough to motivate you to have good customer service, then I'm not sure what is. I can think of some businesses where you do get, and especially the car business is not exempt from that, from people having problems and or maybe a lemon law situation, and they get a little angry at a small business, a car dealer. And it's not beyond the realm of reason that somebody would go out and try and hire one of these services to do damage to your business. So it's called organized crime for a reason. They're very organized. They run your business like you run yours or we run ours. They're organized into departments. You might have noticed that things like phishing emails have gotten harder to detect lately. That's because they've got graphic artists and people with marketing expertise working on phishing emails. They don't look as hacked as they used to, with poor graphics and bad resolution logos and things like that. They've gotten really professional about all this. And they partner with each other for those efficiencies, just like we would. So they view this as a job, just like we view our jobs. But the difference is obviously their malicious intent separates them from the rest of us. So this is just an image of what it looks like when they put your data up for sale. This is just like you'd be on Amazon or any other e-commerce site. Consider it an e-commerce site. And that's how they're selling the information that they've stolen. This is credit card information. You'll notice on the right that they even have ratings, probably like your business does. Most of us would probably kill for all those 5 stars on Yelp. But just making the point here that this really is a business. On this slide, I've taken a little bit of creative liberty in making this look like it was torn from the press, but this actually is language from an ad on the dark web. Bad guys advertising their services to other cyber criminals. They're offering money back guarantees. They're suggesting that, trustworthiness and honesty and professionalism are attributes that are part of their brand, which is really kind of crazy when you think about it. But it's really the concept of honor amongst thieves. I've seen LinkedIn profiles, cybercriminals with LinkedIn profiles saying that they're, maybe they call themselves a very experienced software developer with deployments on millions of laptops in multiple markets, without telling you that software they've written is actually malware. But enough of this doom and gloom. I hope I've painted a picture for you of just what this world looks like. But what do you do about it? Is technology the answer? What do we do? So as a friend of mine likes to say, you don't need to outrun the bear, you just need to outrun your buddy. Doing some simple things can really help. It looks like my slide isn't. So this is a concept that we in security love. It's looking at security as a three-legged stool. It's people, it's process, and it's technology. Technology alone is not the answer. And if you asked me, I would tell you that it's really all about people, because it's people who execute on your processes. It's people who make the technology. It's people who configure and install and monitor that technology. So it's really about people, and these things don't have to be expensive either. Unfortunately, we do think about technology when we think about cybersecurity. We think about things like firewalls and antivirus, and those are all very important, and we'll talk a little bit about those. But as I said, I really believe the most important part is human beings. And we kind of fall into two different categories. Well-intentioned people coming to work every day to work in your business, that maybe have been tricked by a bad guy, or maybe they've made a mistake. And then there's malicious employees, which is a much rarer circumstance. And then there's actually bad people doing bad things. So technology is critical, but it doesn't solve everything. Most bad things do happen, though, due to some human error along the way that open the door to cybercrime. So you might recognize some of these logos. I've collected a few of the big ones from large data breaches over the last almost decade now, it seems like. And there's one thing that all of these had in common. And that was a phishing email. In fact, the vast majority of data breaches start with the lowly phishing email. Spear phishing, which is just a fish aimed at somebody with access to something that the bad guys want. Think of it as a thief. Like, we have a problem in our neighborhood. We had a problem last year with folks coming in middle of the night, prying car doors of cars left in driveways. And if you live in Texas, you know that your Texas basement is your garage. So a lot of us have a car in the driveway instead of having both our cars in the garage or all our cars in the garage. So they're just looking for a car door that's left open with a laptop or a phone left in the car. It's opportunistic. So it's really about just not leaving your car doors open, right? The criminals going on to the next target. So phishing emails are just one way that they're looking for an easy target, right? And as I said, these used to be really obvious. Misspellings, bad graphics. Now they're customized. Now they're going to find the name of your office manager on your website or on LinkedIn, and they're going to design an email and specifically target him or her because of the access that person has to your finances, access to your bank account, for example. So training your employees to be on the lookout for phishing emails, even ones that are super customized and targeted, is definitely worth your while and can go a long way. It's one of the cheapest things you can do as well. this is an example of a phishing email that I've been using for a number of years. And I still use it because it's still a relevant example. It's a tactic that bad guys are still using. So when I was working at a company in the auto industry, one of our salespeople got this email from the chief financial officer of one of our customers, the CFO of a car dealership. And we were actually in the sales cycle with this customer. So the salesperson was indeed expecting a contract, and he clicked on it. And I asked him why he clicked on it. I said, were you expecting a DocuSign? And he said, no, but I was expecting a signed contract. I figured the dealer just changed his mind and instead was sending me the DocuSign. So the hard part about this one is that there are very few clues that anybody would recognize. It came directly from the customer's email box. Unfortunately, this dealership had a network compromise. The bad guys had access to their email boxes. And what they'll do is set up auto forwarding rules and use some filtering to go through and find threads really quickly that they can jump in on. And it's not a spoofed email address. It seems appropriate for the situation. It's in context. And so they can be very, very hard to recognize. The only real clue that this was a phish was that at the time, a real DocuSign email included a serial number, which I didn't even know until I went to the security pages on the DocuSign website. Since then, I've seen phishing emails with fake DocuSign serial numbers, so not even a good clue to go by. But what should have set our salesperson off is just that spidey sense that this wasn't exactly what he was expecting. He was expecting an attachment, not expecting a DocuSign. So relying on your intuition, training your employees to look for anything that seems or feels a little bit out of the ordinary, even if they can't put their finger on exactly what it is, goes a long way to protect your business. He probably should have picked up the phone and called this particular customer. We've done some research that told us that 70% of employees are always checking for phishing or looking at links to make sure they're legitimate before they click on anything. And this other stat, if you'd have told me years ago that if something didn't seem right, I should pick up the phone and call, I'd have told you that that felt socially awkward and sounded a little paranoid, and I don't want to do that. Well, these days, almost 3/4 of people are picking up the phone to check. So having established processes, when there's any change to a process, particularly that involves finances, picking up the phone and calling at a number that you or your employees know to be the right number is the thing to do. So that's just one example of the people side. But I've got 3 categories here and a short list of other things you can do under the heading of people to protect your business. Having hopefully you're doing background checks and you have procedures for new hires. We're also running credit reports before you hire somebody, and then having robust new hire onboarding processes, having employees sign non-disclosure agreements, having policies and procedures, things like access. What systems and data do people need access to make sure that you're tracking all that? It can be really easy to lose track of who's got access to what data and what systems. And then if that person leaves, we'll talk about that in a minute, then that can be really hard to manage if you haven't kept track of it, if you didn't have a process to begin with. What are the rules and the policies, your rules of behavior? How do we do things around here? What's acceptable and what's not when it comes to data and access? Is it okay to open attachments and emails from people you don't know, or are we going to have a policy against that? Is that not possible just because of the type of business that we're in? So we need to take other measures. What's acceptable use of technology and what's not? Just documenting these things can go a really long way. And then, as I said, educating your employees on recognizing phishing emails and other security threats, having annual training on your policies, having people acknowledge your policies annually, and then having training and For example, another example here, social media. Who gets to post on behalf of the business and what's acceptable to share and what's not. Documenting these things is really important, and then training people on what your policies are. The other behaviors that we like to focus on, if there were just 5 things you could ask your employees to pay attention to, it would be, or you'd tackle in your business, it would be these 5 human behaviors. Passwords, using multi-factor authentication on everything, keeping software and systems up to date, checking for phishing, whether that's a text or an email, whatever form it's coming in, voice phishing, and having your data backed up. So we did a survey that's available on our website. We called the O-Behave report. We asked people about these 5 different behaviors. Let's look at passwords first. So we asked folks, what is the typical length of your password? Because the longer and more complex, the harder it is to crack. So here were the answers. I would have liked to have seen everybody in that 12 or over category. But the reason this is so important is because you're up against a machine. So you can have a policy on how long and complex your passwords need to be that everybody in your business uses. And I would encourage you to do that. Length and complexity are key. It's the longer and more complex, the longer it takes a password cracking tool to try and crack your password. So just one example of why you need to have a policy on passwords. We also asked people about how often they use completely unique passwords for all their different accounts. This is another thing you can have a policy on. Thou shalt not recycle passwords. This data has actually gotten better over the last year or 2. But why is it so important that we use completely unique passwords? A lot of us like to think of a password that meets all those length and complexity rules, but is also something we can remember, and we kind of fall in love with it. We call it my password. You know, that's my password. That's the one I use. Well, if you're old like me, you remember having a Yahoo account back in the days of AOL dial-up and all that good stuff. So when they had a large breach that involved usernames and passwords quite a while ago, it was before I was working in security, I thought to myself, who cares? If somebody has access to my Yahoo account, they can have at it. I haven't done anything with that account in a million years. I have nothing of value. It doesn't matter to me. But the reality is that cybercriminals are using credentials stolen in one breach to try and break into your other accounts. So if I use that Yahoo password, or even some iteration of it, something that looked very similar, they can use that to break into other accounts that I might have. And they're using technology to do this. So they're doing it at scale. And they're also working through common iterations of my 1Password, because they know we do that. We might change a few characters at the end or something. So it's technology that allows them to do that quickly. So you say, okay, Lisa, I get it. I need to have a completely unique password for all my accounts and have a policy that my employees do that too. And it needs to be long and complex. How am I supposed to remember all that? Well, that was one of the questions we asked people. Unfortunately, the most common answer was I write them down in a notebook. Now, if you have that notebook under lock and key, in your desk drawer, some people might think that that's a pretty rare possibility that somebody's actually going to get their hands on that thing physically, but it's not completely out of the realm of reality. And I can't believe that you don't take it with you somewhere, like on vacation or to a coffee shop. What I don't like about a password notebook is if it's lost or stolen, the recovery is really, really difficult. Regaining access to all of your accounts, especially if somebody has access to your email account and they've used that to reset your password, that usually you'll get an email confirmation if a password's been reset on another account. So that really gives them the keys to the kingdom. And if they go through and start resetting your passwords, then it can be incredibly difficult to unwind this and really, really laborious. to regain control of your accounts. And it might even involve having to shut down online access completely to things like your bank account until you can go there in person and prove that you're really you. Because if somebody's got access to all your other accounts, it can be really hard for the party on the other end through digital means to know who they're dealing with. Are they dealing with you, or are they dealing with the person who just happened to find your password notebook somewhere? We are big fans of password managers at the National Cybersecurity Alliance. So I would suggest you have a password manager account for your business. I have seen some businesses that also license these so that they can be used by their employees for home use, because that really helps you get adoption. Even though there's been some high profile headlines about, for example, LastPass and their security issues, I'm still a big fan of these solutions, particularly if you use multi-factor authentication to protect the password vault itself, and then have MFA on all your other accounts. We'll talk about that in a minute. But these are using strong encryption. I'm not going to recommend anyone in particular. Consumer Reports and Tom's Guide have both reviewed these, and I'll let you look there to see what you might want to use for your business. So the second leg of the stool, we've had people, now we're going to talk a little bit about process. So just like any other process in your business, you're going to want to have somebody who's ultimately responsible for making sure these things happen. So having documented processes in your different departments, and then having champions of those. It could be a department manager, it could be a CFO or somebody like that, but holding department managers responsible for some of these processes in your business, things like access controls, essentially the keys to the business. It can be the access to your CRM, which includes all of your customer data, or your social media accounts, who's like I said, who's able to post on behalf of your business to social media. Third parties, what kind of access are you giving them? Password policies, we talked a little bit about training your employees on those. Verification. Who gets access? Why are they accessing it? When are they accessing it? This is very common with technology vendors, right? They want access to our data and sometimes our networks and our systems. How are you going to go about deciding who gets access to what? The best practice is that nobody gets access to anything more than they absolutely need to do their job. I touched on offboarding processes. This can get really sticky. Somebody's been with us for a while. We haven't been tracking what they have access to. So when it comes to revoking their credentials, you got to know what they have credentials for. It's not just getting the keys and taking their cell phone, but making sure that, if they had access to post to your social media, that you've changed that, whatever other systems they've had access to. And this needs to happen not just within a day. This needs to happen within hours or minutes when somebody leaves your business. I've met some small businesses that have implemented some really common sense processes to protect themselves. For example, I met a car dealer who didn't put funds in his payroll account. He had a separate bank account for running payroll. He didn't fund that account until he was going to cut the checks, just to cut down on the amount of money that was in there. If you think about it, it's pretty easy if you're a bad guy to guess when everybody gets paid, right? It's either going to be weekly, bi-weekly, or the 15th in the end of the month. So if I know your account is full in the days leading up to that, then that's going to paint a target on that account, or maybe the person who has access to that account and is running payroll. So think about things like that. If you weren't able to, if you were a couple days late on payroll because you had a security issue with accessing that account, what would that mean to your employees, not being able to pay your employees on time? What would happen to your ability to recruit good talent and retain good talent if you weren't able to pay on time? That salesperson who's being recruited by your competitor across town, would they still be with you? So thinking through some of these things, some of it's just, kind of common sense, to be honest. That verification piece, don't forget about things like I mentioned in the phishing email, changes of process, of established processes. So if your accounts payable clerk gets an email from a vendor that says we've changed our bank account, our routing number, what have you, making sure you have a process to verify that that's really happening. So this is an example of a little bit of an offboarding nightmare. This came from the auto industry, the industry that's near and dear to my heart. This affected a car dealership when two employees who quit their working for their current dealer went down the road and worked for another one. The dealer did not decommission their access to the dealer's his dealership management system, something that all dealers use to run their business. And they went down the street at their new employer and logged back in. Unfortunately, not completely unheard of. Something like this could happen. So this is why you need really good processes to make sure that you decommission people. In this particular instance, this actually went to court. The statute in that state said that the damages had to be worth more than $5,000. It cost the dealer over $5,000 to get the forensic evidence. And so without that, the case would have been dismissed. So just saying, hey, somebody accessed my system when they shouldn't have is not enough. You've got to have proof. So we used to recommend to our customers, car dealer customers, that they actually had a relationship with a forensics expert for things like this. So good reason to have a relationship with a security professional or a managed services, security services provider with a forensics expert for a case like this. Technology, I'm not going to go deep on this because you're going to hear a lot about technology today, I think. What I would say is that some of you might be IT people in a small business, and you'll hear a lot more, I think, today that will help you. But if you're a business owner and you generally feel overwhelmed with this technology, with the technology piece of cybersecurity, I want you to know that I think you don't have to know the technology yourself. You have to know how to manage it. So think of it like you would your finance function, like bookkeeping. You didn't decide to go become a bookkeeper yourself. Chances are you know enough about the topic to be able to hire somebody and to know that they're doing it well. So so things like having a patching process for the tech in your business, asking your IT professional what their process is and getting an answer that sounds really solid. Not just, oh, I run them when I have time, but here's what our process is, boss. Here's how we do this here. Educating yourself on the technology just enough to know how to manage it. I think that's really, really what it's all about. So I'm going to speed through here. Multi-factor authentication, we touched on this. This is super, super important. The good news here is that most people, when they've started to use it, they keep using it. So have a policy that this is turned on every application that you use. And once people get used to it, they won't moan about it. Believe me. We asked people about their feelings about cybersecurity. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people feeling intimidated about it. If you add up these two columns on the right, that's the majority of folks. And I blame this guy. We've overused him. We see his image all over the place. The hacker in the hoodie, we've used fear too much to talk about this. And I don't think that's empowering. We also worry about this. I don't think we all want to stay up every night worrying about cybersecurity, worrying about being victimized. So what I recommend is, rather than worrying, that we focus on these 5 behaviors. Some of these things are really simple to do in your business. And that you train your employees. We ask people who've had training of all the things you were trained on, what actions did you take? And these were their answers. Most people did something, which is really, really critical. Only 8% of people did nothing at all. I'm going to do a time check here. How are we coming on time? Max, where are we on time?
You currently have about 60 seconds.
Okay.
I know, though, you're doing, and I'll mention it for everyone, the Q&A via Slack. So I'll let you just keep pushing on ahead.
Okay, good. I just want a little time check because I lost track of where I was. Only 8% of people did nothing. So if you can train your employees, again, it's the cheapest thing you can do of all the security solutions that are out there. Training is very inexpensive. We have a lot of free training. So training your people on these behaviors is really, really critical. I'm not going to go deep into this, but this is a really great place to start. And I'm not sure, but there might be other folks talking about this today. This is the 5-step approach from NIST, the National Institutes of Science and Technology. Identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So going through a process, maybe having a security consultant go through this with you is really, really a great place to start, and doesn't have to be expensive. A lot of this is people and process. So identify, what are the things that are most important to you? Is it people, data, technology, assets? What do you need to be protecting in your business? Protect. This is the people, process, technology piece that we talked about, making sure that those things are protected. Number 3, how will you know if something has gone wrong? That's really important. Time is of the essence. So is somebody going to monitor your network? Do you have a vendor to do that? What software and systems will you have in place to tell you if something isn't right? 4, respond. So what we like to say is, if it's not if this is going to happen, but when this is going to happen to me, right? Presume you're going to have some sort of security incident. So who's going to stop the bleeding and figure out exactly what happened to your business? You probably want professional advice for this. My experience is that car dealers who operate in hurricane zones are really, really good at this. They know how to conduct business without cell phones, without electricity, so without access to their systems. They have, think about it, if they have to service a first responder vehicle after something like a hurricane, they've still got to be able to conduct business with paper and pencil and still repair cars and keep things like ambulances and fire trucks on the road if that's part of their business. So could you do business on paper temporarily, for example, if you got hit with ransomware and had to shut your systems down? Having a written, printed plan and storing it somewhere, not storing it digitally, but keeping it somewhere safe so that you can use that is really important. Do you know who your local federal law enforcement is, or local law enforcement that you would want to contact in case of a ransomware incident, for example? Do you know what your state's breach notification laws are? And does your lawyer know that and how you're going to respond to those things? Really, really important. And then recover. How do you regain customer trust? Do you need a PR firm to help you repair your reputation? What lessons have you learned? What did you do well? What didn't you do so well? What are you going to do differently to make sure it doesn't happen again? How will you prevent a security incident, a similar security incident in the future? So your goal here isn't to not have an incident. Your goal is to be able to recover. Your goal is actually resilience. So as I said, I really think that you have to make somebody or some people in your business responsible and hold them accountable. So things, as you probably know, things don't happen in your business unless somebody's responsible and you give them the authority to get it done. So create a written plan, find experts you can rely on. Remember, your goal is resilience. This is a process, not an event. Security isn't something that's one and done. This is going to be a process that's ongoing, and have a champion and or multiple champions in your business and hold them accountable. I don't want you to think about the hacker in the hoodie. I don't want you to think about staying up at night wondering how much your data is worth on the dark web. I want you to feel like this. I want you to feel that you're ready, that you can be resilient, that education should feel empowering to you and your employees. So I'm here to tell you that I want you to take some action, and with that action, you'll have more peace of mind. And maybe we can make a dent in that hacker in a hoodie imagery. So that's it for me. I invite you to follow us on social media or visit us at staysafeonline.org. And I'll be in the chat on and off today on Slack if you have any questions.